My name is Zoe, I'm 30 years old, the wife of the man the entire Williams family praises as the ideal role model. Today is their annual family gathering, held at a luxury resort in the mountains of Asheville, North Carolina, where the air is crisp and everything is decorated like a ceremony honoring prestige at its peak. I sat quietly in the front row of the grand banquet hall, holding my 3-month-old daughter Riley, as the golden light shone on silk-covered tables and rows of red velvet chairs. My husband, Marcus, stood near the podium, rehearsing his speech to receive the Family Legacy Award from his father, Victor Williams, founder of Williams Medical Group, the fourth largest medical corporation in the state. Next to Marcus was a massive LED screen that would display the speech I had edited for him at 2 a.m. right after feeding Riley. He wore a custom black suit, flashing a confident smile and smug look that seemed to draw every gaze in the room. At 35, Marcus was the golden child of the Williams family. The man everyone believed embodied traditional values, dedication, loyalty, family first. At least until this morning when I saw the message on his phone. I'm not in the habit of snooping, but this time, the message popped up right on the lock screen, a short sentence that made my hands tremble as I held my baby. Last night was amazing. I can still feel your arms around me. The sender was Clara, Marcus's new personal assistant hired less than 2 months ago. I had smiled when she greeted me at the company's Christmas party, thinking she seemed polite and capable. I was wrong. The initial shock made it hard to breathe, and Riley stirred gently in my arms as if pulling me back from a daze. I unlocked his phone. The passcode was still our wedding date. Clearly, Marcus hadn't thought to change it. And then I saw everything. Messages, photos, videos, plans to start his own company, using the Williams family name and a VIP client list I had personally managed when I worked in strategic IT. This wasn't just an affair, it was a calculated betrayal. And during all that time, I had been at home, working remotely, caring for our child, while listening to him whisper sweet words like, everything was still intact. Zoe, let me know if you need anything, said Evelyn, my mother-in-law, gently approaching, adjusting the blanket covering baby Riley, who was sleeping soundly in my arms. Marcus is really nervous. This award is a big milestone. You're lucky having such a successful husband. I gave a faint smile. If only she knew what I knew, that smile wouldn't be on her perfectly made-up face. Thank you, Mom. I'm going to check Marcus's presentation one last time, I said, handing Riley to her. The tech team was finishing up the AV system. I stepped up to the console and plugged in Marcus's phone. As the person handling tech, he always left that part to me because you're better at it. And this time, I didn't disappoint. I knew exactly when Clara's morning video call would come through, 9:45 a.m. They called each other every day at that time as if I, his wife, didn't exist in his busy schedule. I checked the clock, 9:43, just 2 more minutes. The room was filling up, buzzing with greetings, clinking glasses, and eager glances. My father-in-law stood at the podium, holding the framed award for Marcus. And Marcus, my husband, smiled and shook hands with each board member, completely unaware that in just a few minutes, everything he'd built on lies would be exposed on the very screen he'd asked me to help manage. I stepped back as the lights dimmed slightly. The show was about to start. Riley was still peacefully asleep in Evelyn's arms. I placed a hand on my stomach to steady my breath. Everything was ready. The truth didn't need to be shouted. It just needed the right stage and the right crowd. 9:44 a.m. Ding chimed from Marcus's phone, in perfect rhythm with my racing heart. On screen, a provocative message popped up. Wake up, baby. I'm wearing your favorite color today. Don't keep me waiting too long. Signed simply. I stayed calm, held down the screen, and opened the full thread. The real name of C appeared quickly. Clara Reed. Marcus's new assistant. My eyes scanned the stream of messages, photos, even hotel room videos I had never stepped foot in. One video made my hand pause. Marcus, in that same white shirt, laughing with Clara in a room labeled Four Winds, Chicago. The problem was, during last month's Chicago trip, Marcus told me he went with his father to meet investors. I kept scrolling, unable to stop. There was even a picture of Clara in a burgundy nightgown, standing next to a laptop mid-video call labeled Monday 9:45 a.m. How long had this been going on? A month? 2? No. The earliest message dated back 8 months. When I was in the hospital delivering Riley, Clara had messaged Marcus, "Hope her labor goes well, I miss you." A hand tapped my shoulder. It was Brandon, the AV lead. "Everything okay, Zoe? This phone's connection is a little slow, but I've synced the video from the server. Just waiting on your cue to play." I nodded, slipping the phone into my dress pocket. "Thank you, Brandon, right on time. That's all I need." Marcus continued chatting with board members, carefree as ever, as if the world revolved around him. Meanwhile, I felt like I was floating between two worlds, one full of cheerful chatter, the other cold and silent, weighed down by all the evidence sitting in my pocket. Along with the flirty messages, I found a chain of emails titled Branch Strategy. The sender? Marcus. Recipients? Clara and 2 major potential clients Williams Medical was courting. In it, Marcus pitched a plan to shift focus away from his father's company, launching a new branch with a modern medical tech model. My name showed up in one line. "Zoe won't notice, she's busy with the baby and still thinks I'm doing all this for the family." I closed my eyes for a few seconds, sweat running down my spine. This wasn't just emotional betrayal. Marcus was betraying his father's trust, and the company he claimed he would carry forward. Clara sent one more photo. A hotel reservation for 2 at Coral Sands in Bermuda, from the 15th to the 20th next month. That's Marcus's birthday. And me? I had already scheduled a family celebration at Victor's estate. The final blow was a voice memo, clearly recorded by Marcus in his car. "We need to cut Zoe out of the upcoming project. She knows too much. Clara can take over, she's easier to manage." I folded the phone shut. I didn't need to say anything. I didn't need to scream or cry. The evidence would speak for itself. And the perfect stage was the one Marcus chose to glorify himself. "Zoe, everything look good?" Marcus's voice came from behind. He adjusted his tie and smiled. The same smile that once convinced me I was the only woman in his world. I turned and handed him the phone. "Yes, everything's ready." He nodded, gently placing a hand on my back like always, whispering, "I'm so nervous. This is a big moment." I looked straight into his eyes, voice soft as breath. "Yes. A very big moment. And not just for you." Riley still slept peacefully in Evelyn's arms. The lights dimmed, silence fell. Marcus walked on stage. Behind him, the LED screen began to glow. Just seconds left. I turned to Brandon and gave him a small nod. The video call was about to appear, and when it did, this entire hall would lose its composure. Marcus might think he controlled everything, until the one person he overlooked turned out to be the one who knew it all. Before I became a technical consultant for Williams Medical Group, I was a systems engineer. For the past 7 years I had managed all their shareholder meetings, strategy summits, and even this annual family gathering. Every time my father-in-law Victor saw the system running flawlessly, he'd pat my shoulder and say, "No one does it better than Zoe." And he was right, no one could use this system better than me. 3 days ago, before I knew anything about Marcus's affair, I personally checked the resort's AV system, high-resolution LED screens, 5G video streaming, and automatic input signal recognition. I knew that once a registered device connected, any incoming call would appear on the screen in less than 3 seconds. And I had quietly registered Marcus's phone with the central system. That way, when Clara called as usual, the signal would automatically display on the screen, right in front of the entire Williams family. No edits, no replays. Just the truth, revealed, at the right time, in the right place, to the right people. I spent an entire night testing the setup, in case Marcus changed the schedule or used a different device. But he didn't. He was a creature of habit, careless in his predictability. That 9:45 a.m. call was sacred, like a ritual in their little world, no matter if I was in the next room or outside with our daughter. At 9:44, I stepped back to the wall-side row of chairs where I could see the whole ballroom without being noticed. Riley was still peacefully asleep in Evelyn's arms. Marcus stood on stage adjusting the mic. Below, his father, Mr. Victor, stepped up to the podium, his voice filled with pride. The Williams family has always been rooted in loyalty, integrity, and dedication, and today we honor the one who has carried on that legacy, my son, Marcus. Polite applause filled the room. No one knew that in just a few seconds, those claps would be replaced by stunned silence. I glanced at the control panel, a green light blinked, the signal was coming through. Suddenly the screen behind Marcus lit up. A video feed popped on. It wasn't a PowerPoint slide as expected. Clara appeared on screen, hair softly tousled, lips pink, wearing a sheer cream blouse I recognized from one of her texts. "I'll wear your favorite today." "Good morning, handsome," she said, voice sweet as honey, completely unaware she was now live in front of nearly 100 people. "I'm still trembling from last night. Don't forget about Saturday dinner. I booked the room at the Silver Bay." Marcus froze. His hands gripped the podium like he'd fall if he let go. A gasp, "Oh my God!" broke out from the front row. A few people turned to look at me, but I stayed silent, lightly touching the small remote hidden in my dress pocket. Clara kept going, unaware. "I already sent you the draft for the new business shift. They're really impressed. And Zoe? I'm sure she's still buried in baby stuff. We need to move fast before she wakes up." The shock in the room cracked like glass. Mr. Victor stood frozen, speechless. My mother-in-law stared at Marcus, still holding Riley tightly, as if letting go would shatter everything she believed in. "Clara," Marcus suddenly yelled, voice booming through the mic, "turn it off, now!" Clara paused, eyes widening as she finally realized the background behind Marcus wasn't their usual wall. It was a formal ballroom, filled with family and corporate partners watching her every word. "Oh no," she whispered and disappeared from the screen. The screen went black, no one said a word, no one moved. "Zoe," Marcus turned toward me, voice cracking. It's not what you think." I walked toward him slowly. "Not what I think? Marcus, do you really believe I didn't know? That I didn't notice the sudden meetings, the business trips during holidays? I knew everything." Victor remained still, looking at Marcus with a gaze that held no pride, only deep disappointment. I gave a polite nod to the crowd. "I apologize for interrupting the ceremony, but some truths can't wait another year." I turned and left the ballroom, feeling lighter than I had in months. Not because I got revenge, but because I reclaimed what mattered most, the truth. Marcus stood frozen on stage, eyes wide, lips moving without sound. The room felt like it had been drained of air. Moments ago those eyes sparkled with pride. Now they were filled with disbelief and suspicion. Then came Victor's voice. Cold, clear, unshakable. "Marcus, is this true?" Marcus swallowed hard, hands shaking, eyes darting as if begging someone to speak for him. But no one did. The powerful guests he once charmed, the partners who called him their perfect heir, now looked away, avoiding eye contact like dodging an oncoming storm. "Dad, it's not what you think." Marcus tried to step down from the podium, but his voice had no weight anymore. Evelyn still held Riley, her face pale. She turned to me, no longer composed. "Zoe, how long have you known?" I didn't answer right away. I looked at Marcus, held his gaze in the thick silence, then spoke. Softly but loud enough for the room to hear. "Since the moment you stopped seeing me in your life." A gasp came from behind. One of Marcus's uncles stood up, shaking his head. "At the award ceremony. Marcus, have you lost your mind?" Marcus turned to me, desperate. "Zoe, please, don't destroy everything I've built." I took a step forward, voice steady. "What did you build, Marcus? A family? An honest company? Or just a performance where the rest of us were background props?" And then, the worst thing for him happened. A second video played. The system, as I had programmed, automatically recorded yesterday's call. Clara's voice returned. "I sent the customer shift proposal. With your influence, we could move at least 6 major accounts. Victor won't suspect a thing. Zoe's probably busy reading baby books." The entire room collapsed into chaos. Victor said nothing more. He walked to the center of the room, face like stone. He didn't look at Marcus. He looked at me. "Zoe," he said, "could you take Riley outside for a bit? I need to speak with my son. Alone." I understood. This was no longer a celebration. It was an unspoken tribunal. And Marcus had just been exposed before the altar of his legacy. I nodded, walked over to Evelyn, and gently lifted Riley, who remained asleep as if she could feel the storm but chose peace. Before leaving, I paused beside Marcus. He reached out as if to stop me, but I only looked at him, not with rage or vengeance, but with sorrow for what had once been beautiful. "I'm not destroying you, Marcus," I said, just loud enough for him. "You did that yourself." I walked out of the ballroom as whispers buzzed behind me, the stage lights now illuminating every crack Marcus had tried to hide. In the hallway, I cradled Riley close and kissed her forehead. There was no panic anymore, no trembling, no pain, only relief. I had chosen truth over silence, strength over retreat, and I knew from that moment on, I no longer lived in that man's shadow. The conference room door clicked shut behind me. I stood still in the thick carpeted hallway, golden light spilling over Riley's peaceful face. From inside, murmurs rose. Questions, speculation, and the heavy silence of a family who once believed Marcus was the perfect heir. I didn't cry. Strangely, after all that happened, I felt calm. Eerily calm. Maybe because I knew this wasn't the end. It was just the first step in cutting ties with a life built on lies. I brought Riley back to the hotel room and called my lawyer, Marlene Carter, a sharp woman in her 40s who had helped me draft tech partnership contracts with 3 of Marcus's biggest clients. Marlene, I need to initiate divorce proceedings and I want full custody. She didn't ask why. She just said, I'll send the documents to the courthouse ASAP. Zoe, I know you're strong, but this time I'll make sure he doesn't get away back in. I nodded, resolved. Around that time, inside the meeting room, Victor Williams, the man who once pinned all his hopes on Marcus, took action. I knew because an hour later, while nursing Riley, the first company-wisely notification appeared on my phone. Effective immediately, Marcus Williams has been suspended from his role as CEO. All access to company systems and accounts has been frozen pending an internal investigation. Below that was an update. Executive Assistant Clara Reed has been terminated and is required to vacate corporate premises within 24 hours. I leaned back, listening to Riley's steady breaths. The anger had cooled. Now it was time for action. Legal, calculated, irreversible. 2 hours later, I received a call from an unknown number. It was Victor. Zoe, he began, voice no longer sharp but tired and solemn. I know this wasn't easy, but thank you for showing me the truth before it was too late. I didn't respond immediately. I squeezed Riley gently and said, I didn't do it for you, I did it for my daughter. Victor was quiet for a moment, then sighed. I've ordered the legal team to freeze all Marcus's accounts tied to the company. They're gathering evidence from IT. If he really transferred confidential data to competitors, this won't stay internal. I knew Marcus was arrogant enough not to realize Clara had left a trail everywhere. Emails, calls, attachments, all enough to qualify as serious breaches of business confidentiality. I've also instructed HR to revoke all Marcus's executive privileges, Victor added, his tone colder. He will face the consequences. As for you, if you need any support from the company, I'm here. I closed my eyes and nodded slowly. No thanks needed. Thank you, but first I need to protect my daughter from a man who doesn't deserve to be her father. The call ended. I opened my laptop. Marlene had sent the divorce draft and a proposal for custody of Riley. There was also a note. You may request compensation for reputational damage, given your public role at company events and the public embarrassment caused. I smiled faintly. Marcus once said, "You'll never understand the big leagues in business. So let me show you, I don't just understand them, I know how to end them. Legally." Before shutting the laptop, I sent Marcus one message. I'm no longer the woman standing behind you. From today, I'll stand in front, protecting everything you took for granted. I set the phone down, watching Riley stir in her sleep. A chapter was closing, and I was ready to write the next one. With me holding the pen. 3 days after the reveal at the conference, I received an invitation to lunch from Victor. The location? The top-floor boardroom of Williams Medical Group headquarters. The room reserved for high-level meetings, where I used to enter as Marcus's wife, and today, as something entirely different. I arrived on time. Victor's assistant, Amelia, led me in. No other staff, no Marcus, just a long conference table, sunlight streaming through the tall windows overlooking the city, and Victor, founder of the company, rising to greet me with a look both heavy and serious. "Thank you for coming, Zoe," he said, motioning for me to sit. "And thank you for not letting Williams Medical fall because of one terrible mistake." I didn't reply. He poured tea for me, hands slightly trembling, not from fear but because he was facing a major decision. I could feel it. I reviewed all the system logs, What you did was smart, professional, and not driven by emotion. He looked at me. Do you know how many key clients you've personally retained for this company over the past 5 years? I tilted my head slightly. Probably about 1/3 of the company's annual revenue. He nodded. And they stayed, not because of Marcus, but because of you. Because they trust you. Trust your competence and integrity. I set my teacup down. Did you invite me here just to praise me? He gave a faint smile, but his gaze grew more serious. I invited you because this company needs someone like you. Zoe, the board held an emergency meeting. They want to offer you the position of Chief Technology Officer, CTO, in Marcus's place. Full authority to restructure the tech, security, and digital transformation divisions of Williams Medical. I was silent for a few seconds. This was something I once dreamed of. A true leadership role, no longer standing in anyone's shadow, no longer an unnamed technical assistant. But I also knew that anything that came quickly usually came with a cost, and I had no intention of becoming the cleanup crew without real power. I have one condition. I lifted my head and looked him straight in the eye. I want a seat on the board. Victor paused, then slowly leaned back. You know that's not easy. I know, I replied, but nothing is easy when you're a woman in a company where all decisions have been made by 5 men, who used to think I was just Marcus's wife. A long silence stretched nearly a minute. Then he sighed. Actually, I was hoping you'd say that. I proposed this condition to the board. Some were hesitant, but no one can deny now that you saved the company from a complete scandal. I was slightly surprised, though I didn't show it. So, what's your decision? He stood, walked over, and handed me a contract. CTO, effective next Monday, with a provisional board seat for 6 months. If you prove your value beyond this crisis, that seat becomes permanent. I took the contract. I didn't need to read the whole thing. I knew I would sign it. Not for the title, not for revenge, but because I wanted to rebuild what was worth saving, on a foundation free of lies. I accept, I said. Victor smiled for the first time since the family gathering. You know, Zoe, you remind me of myself when I was just starting out. Cold when needed, firm when it counts. The only difference is, you're 10 times better at tech than I ever was. I smiled. And I have a 3-month-old daughter who smiles when the code compiles. He laughed heartily. Then maybe it's time you start training Riley early. We shook hands. As I left the boardroom, it felt like I had just stepped through a massive door, not just in my career, but in my life. 1 week after I officially took over as CTO at Williams Medical Group, the fallout from Marcus and Clara's actions began to leak beyond the company walls. The media didn't know the full story yet, but the rumors in the tech and healthcare circles spread like wildfire. I stayed silent. No press conferences, no public comments. My job now was to secure the company's systems, stabilize the new tech team, and retain key clients. But that didn't stop me from keeping tabs on Marcus's side of things. Thursday afternoon, I was reviewing the new data center layout when my assistant, Evelyn, walked in with a hard-to-read expression. You need to see this, she said, handing me a tablet already streaming a live news report from Miami. On screen, Clara Reed appeared disheveled, pale, her hands cuffed, escorted by 2 police officers out of a beachfront condo. The headline running across the bottom read, Former Executive Assistant Clara Reed, arrested for suspected corporate espionage, confidential Williams medical documents found in residence. I sat in silence for a few seconds. Even though I had anticipated this, seeing it actually unfold still hit me with a sharp bitterness. Clara had walked into our office with a polite smile and a spotless resume, and behind our backs, she had stolen internal data and handed it to competitors, with the help of my husband, or rather, my soon-to-be ex-husband. There's just over $600 left in the joint account Marcus and Clara were using, Evelyn said quietly. She withdrew most of it in Miami for designer shopping, spas, villa deposits. Police say they'll be tracking every cent. I nodded, eyes still locked on the screen. What about Marcus? Detroit police are questioning him. He's still denying that he knew Clara transferred the data, but Evelyn handed over another folder. Our legal team just received a copy of emails retrieved from Clara's backup server. Nearly 70% of them were written by Marcus. He was the one who sent the VIP client list. including the original version with digital signatures. I flipped through the documents. My eyes stopped on one line. Clara, make sure the partner doesn't reveal the source. I'll handle the equity withdrawal within 30 days. The data I sent should be enough to earn their trust. There was nothing left to deny. That afternoon, the company held a short press conference. Victor, joined by the legal team and the new executive board, including me, officially announced that Marcus Williams had been stripped of all rights and was under federal investigation for violating business confidentiality and willfully leaking sensitive information. I didn't speak, I simply stood in the background representing a new generation of leadership, one that didn't build its legacy on names or bloodlines but on skill and truth. 3 days later, Marcus was arrested at his temporary apartment. When the police arrived, he was trying to wipe his personal computer, but it was too late. I was informed that Marcus could face up to 10 years in prison if convicted on all counts. Clara? Her unauthorized data transfer to a rival company carried a minimum sentence of 12 years, along with a hefty civil penalty. That evening, as I was leaving the office, I got a call from Marcus's lawyer. Zoe, Marcus wants to negotiate his personal equity stake in the company to reduce his charges. He says if you agree not to pursue personal litigation, the court might consider leniency. I looked up at the Detroit night sky, the office lights reflected in the windows like a reminder of how far I'd come. I'll let the law decide, I said firmly, and tell him I'm no longer part of his game. I hung up and walked away, head held high. Marcus had fallen, Clara too, but I was still standing, stronger than ever, no longer in anyone's shadow. 1 year after Marcus was escorted out of the company's headquarters, I stood where he once stood, the center stage at the Great Lakes Women in Tech Conference in Chicago. But this time the spotlight wasn't for hollow speeches or empty promises. This time it was the true voice of recovery, of competence, and of trust rebuilt from ruin. I wore a navy mule suit, minimalist but commanding, standing tall before over 400 attendees, most of them young women carrying the same dream I once held. Behind me, the new Williams Medical digital logo glowed, a tree branch with deep roots and wide leaves, symbolizing the company's transformation. Has anyone here ever been underestimated because they were someone's wife? I asked to open my keynote. A few soft chuckles echoed, but I saw the knowing looks in the audience. I smiled. I used to stand backstage, I used to write slides for someone else's speech, I used to check microphones, adjust the lights, holding my 3-month-old baby behind the curtain. And then one day, I couldn't stay quiet any longer. I told them not a dramatized version of my life, but the real journey. How I used my tech skills to set up the automated system that caught the data breach. How I handled the security threats after Marcus and Clara. How I rebuilt a technical team with 40% women and led the development of our first flagship product, an AI and blockchain integrated medical record platform, now licensed at over 120 hospitals nationwide. Over the past year, Williams Medical Digital hadn't just recovered. We'd skyrocketed. Our client base grew by 63%, tech revenue more than doubled. New offices opened in Boston and San Francisco, and last week our international team in Singapore secured a contract to implement our security system at one of Asia's largest hospital chains. I stepped off stage to a long round of applause, but what moved me most was when a group of tech students approached, eyes shining. Miss Zoe, I never thought a single mom could become the CTO of a major corporation, but now I believe. I squeezed the girl's hand, feeling warmth rise in my chest. It's not that I'm weaker because I'm a single mom. It's because I'm a single mom that I have to be stronger. That evening back in Detroit, I picked up Riley from Evelyn's house, my former mother-in-law who still insisted on being Riley's grandmother despite everything that had changed. She hugged me and gently said, "You didn't just save the company, you rebuilt a family." Riley ran toward me, her tiny arms wrapping around my neck. She was nearly 2 now, and every morning she wanted to bang on the keyboard, like Mommy at work. I knew her future wouldn't be defined by labels or last names. She would grow up in a world where worth was measured by ability and character. That night I sat at my desk, quarterly report open on the screen. The numbers were all strong. But more important than the data was the peace I felt. No more anxiety when checking emails. No more fear of being dismissed. No more proving myself through silence. A notification popped up on my phone. The court has denied Marcus's final appeal. Sentence upheld. Request to divide company shares rejected. I set the phone aside. No sense of triumph, just the closing of an old chapter. A chapter once written in tears, now closing in triumph. Then I began drafting plans for our new product, MediShield 2, the next-generation medical data security platform. This time, I wasn't writing it for anyone else. I was writing it for myself. And for the future I was building each day, with the hands of someone who had once been underestimated in every room, but never lost her true value. Late afternoon light stretched across tree-lined streets in a quiet neighborhood in North Detroit. I slowly drove down the newly paved road, pulling up to our newly renovated home, finally complete after 6 months of work. Riley sat in the back seat, eyes wide at the wooden swing hanging from the oak tree out front. She squealed, "Mommy and Riley's house is here!" I parked, stepped out, and opened her door. Together we walked through the black iron gate with floral details, up the white stone steps. This house wasn't the biggest I'd ever lived in, but it was the first I'd chosen, designed, and built with my own hands and strength. No Marcus. No one else's name on the deed but mine. We passed through the sunlit living room, past the glass wall facing the garden, where I'd planted lavender and white roses, Riley's favorites. My new office had been custom-built with a 2-tier desk, the lower tier for me, the upper one for Riley to work with Mommy on weekend mornings. I played soft jazz, opened the windows and let the breeze carry in the scent of fresh wood and bergamot. Riley ran around clutching her favorite teddy bear. I sat on the sofa, tablet in hand, reviewing the latest financial report from Williams Medical Digital. Last quarter's growth had far exceeded projections. Over 200 hospitals across the U.S. had now registered for MediShield, and we had just expanded into Canada. Our engineers in Singapore had completed the first prototype of our self-learning AI intrusion detection system. Meanwhile, the Boston team was partnering with a healthcare startup founded by 3 women. One I personally chose to fund because I saw in their eyes the same drive I once carried. I couldn't help but smile thinking about the road I'd traveled. There was a time I sat in this very kind of room. In my memories, feeling small, doubting myself, living under the shadow of a man who always made himself seem superior. Maybe it was through betrayal that I finally found who I truly was. That night, I tucked Riley into her little bed in her cream-colored room, carefully decorated with love. She slept soundly, soft curls brushing her cheeks. I stood there for a long time, watching her, and realized something beautiful. Riley wasn't just my daughter. She was living proof that I'd made the right choice. That I didn't fall. Before heading to my room, I opened the window and let the night air in. Detroit sparkled in the distance like new opportunities waiting, and I knew I wouldn't stop now. Tomorrow I'd fly to New York to meet with a new European partner about global rollout for our medical security solution. Next week I'd return to my alma mater to mentor young women in tech, and next month, I'd begin writing my first book. Not about scandal or revenge, but about the rise of a woman who chose to stand up through the cracks. I once thought Marcus was the center of my life, but now I know I am the center of my own. And when I stopped chasing validation from others, I started recognizing my own worth. Betrayal is no longer a scar, it's a beginning. Because sometimes, the hardest fall pushes you exactly where you belong. If you're strong enough to walk through the pain, and smart enough to rebuild from ashes, you won't just survive, you'll thrive like never before. I don't need anyone beside me to prove I'm worthy. I have my daughter. I have myself, and I have a wide open world waiting for me to shape it. The Detroit sky that night was as calm as the moment I first opened up to myself. No more bitterness, no more regret, only a woman who knows her worth and never needs to look back. Zoe's story is a powerful reminder that sometimes our deepest wounds open the door to our most radiant rebirth. From a woman betrayed, she rose, reclaiming her life with skill, honor, and unwavering strength. Without vengeance or resentment, Zoe chose dignity and raised her daughter in a home built on integrity. It's a message we all need. When you have the courage to walk away from what no longer serves you, you find where you truly belong. What do you think about Zoe's journey and her choices? Would you have done the same in her shoes? Share your thoughts below and don't forget to follow the channel for more heartfelt family stories to come.